Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redacted.
The files didn't just leak, they exploded careers. Everyone thought the Epstein story was buried deep, sealed away like a bad dream from another era. But this new data dump just ripped the lid off that illusion, dragging some powerful faces right back into the chaos. What's surfacing now is wild. A revived claim that Ghislaine Maxwell once tried to recruit a teenage Paris Hilton for Jeffrey Epstein. Hilton fired back fast, saying she's just being used as a good clickbait name. But even her denial couldn't stop the fresh wave of files hitting the web like digital grenades. A photo from September 18th, 2000 shows Hilton posing with Maxwell and Donald Trump at the Anne and John fashion show in New York City. A snapshot that suddenly feels loaded with new meaning. By 2008, Epstein locked in that notorious plea deal and did just 13 months under a work release setup that had everyone asking questions. Fast forward to 2025, and politicians are now fighting tooth and nail over whether to drop every file, while officials swear up and down that a so-called client list doesn't even exist. Millions of pages are uploaded, then suddenly pulled back for review. Why the stop and go if there's truly nothing left to hide? This isn't just another scandal crawling back to the surface. This feels like the whole control system cracking apart before our eyes, and the next wave of names, they won't land quietly. That crack splits wide open once you see how this so-called release actually goes down. The Department of Justice brags about posting over 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images tied to the Epstein investigation. A massive info drop that sounds unstoppable. But then, right when the buzz peaks, they slam the brakes and say they need to review what's left. Lawmakers had already pushed through the Epstein Files Transparency Act back in November 2025, promising the truth would finally come out. Yet just a month later, another batch goes live, only for officials to pull a full reversal, claiming they suddenly need more time. By February 2025, the Attorney General even teased on live TV that a client list might be sitting right on her desk. The internet went wild, but by July 7th that same year, the department officially declared Epstein never kept a list at all and that no more files would be released. That kind of whiplash hit hard and left people furious. Insiders near Capitol Hill whispered that members of Congress were completely blindsided by the backpedal, while industry figures reportedly started calling their lawyers the moment the news broke. The pattern's now too obvious. They promise a dump, drop a teaser, then hit pause and deny everything like it's just red tape. The real impact isn't just procedural, it's reputational. Every time that faucet shuts off, suspicion floods in stronger, filling the silence with pure chaos and mistrust. Every little moment in this saga explodes like it's brand new again. That old Surviving Jeffrey Epstein docuseries from 2020 is suddenly back in the spotlight, trending again like it just dropped yesterday. In one scene, composer Christopher Mason recalls a party where Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly scanned the room, eyes sharp, looking for younger faces. Then, according to him, she locked onto Paris Hilton and said, "Perfect for Jeffrey." That line alone reignited the fire. Now Hilton, 44, finally speaks up in a recent interview with The Times, saying she doesn't even remember ever meeting Maxwell and adding, "I'm such a good clickbait name." That quote took off instantly, spreading everywhere like lightning. To some, it sounded like total dismissal, to others like a master move in image control. But here's where it gets complicated. Reports keep circling back to that one photograph dated September 18th, 2000 at the Anne and John fashion show in New York City. There she is, Hilton, standing right beside Maxwell and Donald Trump. The photo's not rumor.
Well, it is a Pandora's box in a way. Yeah, sure. Because basically, if you go, as my books show, if you go as deep as I went in writing those two books, and you could certainly go deeper, it basically shows that, the world is basically run by a meta cartel.
It's archived, dated, verified. The place, the time, the faces, they're all locked in. People who lived through that era in fashion remember it as glamorous, reckless, and dripping with excess. But to others looking back now, that same snapshot screams access. The alleged recruitment story floats right next to that confirmed photo moment, and the space between them just keeps getting louder and harder to ignore. This is the point where it stops making sense for anyone claiming this scandal is ancient history. Because in 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to state charges of solicitation involving a minor and still managed to serve only 13 months, a fact that never stopped haunting the timeline. Most of Epstein's so-called sentence was spent under a work release program that let him walk out of jail during the day like it was a 9-to-5 job. That setup isn't rumor, it's fully documented. Just a year later, one of his accusers filed a lawsuit claiming she'd been trafficked to royalty, politicians, top academics, and powerful businessmen. The names weren't printed, but the categories said everything. Fast forward to July 6, 2019. Federal prosecutors in New York swoop in and arrest Epstein again on new trafficking charges tied to crimes from 2002 to 2005. Barely a month later, on August 10, 2019, he's found unresponsive in his Manhattan cell, what officials ruled a self-inflicted act. 3 weeks later, the case was officially dismissed, closing the file but not the questions. Those dates sit frozen in history, impossible to forget. What keeps shifting are the connections. The powerful names, the resurfaced emails, the old photos making the rounds online. What stings most is how many of those relationships kept going long after that 2008 plea deal. And when the 2025 file release finally dropped, it didn't land like one big shocking headline. It read like a directory of familiarity. The Associated Press primer even revealed Prince Andrew showing up hundreds of times in private correspondence. Each new mention made the whole story feel less like random scandal and more like a tight circle finally being exposed. The files go deep, describing invitations to dine at Buckingham Palace and photos that allegedly show Epstein lounging across the legs of several women while Maxwell sits just a few feet away. Then come the bombshell images. Bill Clinton in undated shots, chilling in a hot tub, posing with Maxwell and a lineup of big names like Michael Jackson and Mick Jagger. Even comedian Chris Tucker pops up in flight logs and photos, spotted on an airport runway right beside Maxwell. But here's the twist. None of these entries come with criminal charges, just massive gaps in context. And that's exactly what keeps the frenzy alive. Insiders admit the optics alone are a nightmare, even without direct accusations. Publicists go into full defense mode, rushing out statements claiming limited contact, group settings, or humanitarian events. The wording starts sounding copy-pasted, like everyone's reading from the same crisis playbook. Meanwhile, the files keep stacking name after name, but never stitching together the full picture. Then it gets even wilder when the emails surface. Suddenly, tone and phrasing start being treated as evidence. In a batch from 2012 and 2013, Elon Musk appears in messages discussing possible logistics for visiting Epstein's private Caribbean property, even jokingly asking which night would throw the wildest party. That line alone blew up online. But by 2025, Musk publicly posts that he refused every invitation and never attended a single event there. Still, once your name lands in the Epstein files, denials don't travel nearly as far as the headlines, and every email drop keeps the pressure burning hotter. The files only get messier from here. In one 2013 email, Richard Branson invites Epstein to his private island, even joking about bringing a harem. Then there's Steve Tisch, caught in messages asking whether a woman was a pro or a civilian, and later if she was a working girl, to which Epstein coolly replied, never. The tone in these exchanges, way too casual, shockingly transactional, and totally unguarded. Their reps later scrambled with statements full of regret, claiming limited contact and business-only settings. But the emails are time-stamped and they tell another story. They show familiarity after 2008, talk of dinner plans, event invites, and introductions like nothing ever happened. People who once brushed Epstein off as a disgraced financier suddenly had to face the truth. Some kept replying to his messages, kept taking those invitations, and kept orbiting his world like nothing changed. That's when the political angle kicked in hard. On July 15, 2025, Representatives Rowena and Thomas Massey introduced the Epstein Files Transparency Act, promising to finally drag everything into daylight. By November 18th, Congress passed it, and the president signed it into law, but not before urging House Republicans to support it, calling the entire scandal a Democrat hoax and saying it was time to move on. Then, almost instantly, another twist. Just weeks after a small batch of documents dropped, the Department of Justice hit pause again, claiming they needed more time to review the records. The timing looked suspicious. By November 12th, a House committee released a wave of new emails between Epstein and big names like Prince Andrew and Steve Bannon. And in one 2019 message to a journalist, Epstein allegedly wrote that Trump knew about the girls, without explaining further. That single line set off a media earthquake, bouncing across every network within hours. The FBI said it got hundreds of calls naming powerful figures, but investigators quickly ruled most as not credible. Still, that one vague email was enough to send shockwaves through politics, proving once again how one cryptic sentence can ignite a national storm. The spreadsheet logging those hundreds of FBI calls is even included in the new release, but it raises more questions than answers. Officially, there's no master list of names. Unofficially, suspicion is exploding. People can't shake the feeling that the real secrets, the ones that matter most, never make it to the public servers. And this is where the story starts to twist again, because every gap in truth breeds a new mythology. A scanned document begins spreading online, showing what looks like a bank transfer with the line bile.name next to Wachovia Bank and an account called One Clear Lake Center, LLC. Analysts tried to calm the storm, saying it's probably just a mangled version of bank name, but the screenshot raced across social media way faster than any fact check could catch it. Then things get even stranger. The same file dump includes references to 3 pieces of kiswa, the sacred black cloth that covers the Kaaba in Mecca, reportedly shipped to Epstein in 2017. Some brushed it off as clerical weirdness, but others saw dark symbolism, adding fuel to rumors of a cult-like network operating out of Palm Beach. Meanwhile, pop culture couldn't resist. At the 2026 Grammys, Trevor Noah cracked a joke about Nicki Minaj being at the White House with Donald Trump. It was pure comedy. But in this atmosphere, even punchlines start to sound like clues. Just hours after the joke, Nicki Minaj lit up the internet with a cryptic post accusing a satanic cult connected to a favorite artist. She didn't drop a name, but the internet sure did. Within minutes, fans and conspiracy threads started naming everyone imaginable. Meanwhile, the Epstein files just sat there, half public, half locked away, leaving the biggest question hanging in the air. If this is transparency, why does it feel like the truth's being carefully staged? Now the real shift isn't in the files themselves, it's in the behavior surrounding them. And that's exactly what insiders have been whispering about for years. Watch how fast reputations flip. Kevin Spacey suddenly takes to X, formerly Twitter, demanding full disclosure of every Epstein document, painting himself as a man with nothing to hide, even as old photos of him with Ghislaine Maxwell and Bill Clinton start resurfacing. That same nothing to fear posture spreads like wildfire through Hollywood and beyond. Executives who once dodged the Epstein topic now shout for transparency, betting that chaos will level the playing field. Behind the scenes, PR firms in Los Angeles and New York scramble to build full-blown crisis teams overnight. Invitations to elite galas and charity dinners quietly disappearing. Board members start calling for closed-door briefings, desperate to know which names could surface next. What's happening isn't legal panic, it's brand panic. Every move feels like reputation triage in real time. And when Katt Williams steps up reminding everyone he's been warning for years that Hollywood's inner circle protects its own until the tide turns, suddenly, that claim doesn't sound like a wild rant anymore. It sounds like confirmation of a culture he says has been hiding in plain sight all along. The shockwaves don't stop at US borders, they go global. Within days of their emails hitting the light, diplomatic figures lose advisory positions, and former ambassadors publicly express regret as royal households quietly shuffle titles and adjust living setups. Every move screams damage control. Instead of tackling the optics head-on, the strategy is textbook. Isolate the person, protect the institution. In Washington, allies downplay everything as media noise, while critics demand deeper investigations. Meanwhile, the FBI call logs and spreadsheets reappear, testing what they call credibility thresholds. But the fallout doesn't land in court, it lands in reputations. Careers crumble not from verdicts, but from the mere appearance of proximity. Now, just being seen near Epstein, even years ago, carries weight. Titles start shaking under the pressure of photos that can't be unseen. The official response looks procedural, calm, almost bureaucratic, but underneath, it's pure cultural panic. When Katt Williams keeps repeating that the system protects its own until exposure is unavoidable, moments like this start sounding like proof, not paranoia. Inside corporate boardrooms, the new fight isn't about law. It's about narrative control. Who gets to define the story before the public does? That's the new battlefield. And then there's Bill Gates, whose name jumps right into the storm. Draft messages stored in Epstein's email account mention marital strain and business friction, sparking instant speculation. Gates's team blasts the claims as absurd, but the damage is already done. Even if the content is disputed, the fact that those drafts exist at all keeps his connection glowing under a relentless spotlight. And in this climate, perception alone can feel like conviction. The divorce settlements worth tens of billions had already reshaped how the public viewed certain power players. But now, the leaked inbox fragments crank the unease to a whole new level. Whether these messages are clever fakes or raw truth, they raise an even deeper question. Why were these drafts saved at all? In this digital age, executives know one thing for sure. Emails aren't just casual notes. They're permanent records. And once records surface, even half-complete ones, they change the balance of power. That shift fuels growing suspicion that Epstein's relationships weren't brief or random. They were calculated, strategic, and ongoing. Every recovered file feels like another breadcrumb in a trail that's been hidden in plain sight. Meanwhile, the release system itself has become its own drama. Lawmakers stand before cameras preaching transparency, all while quietly calculating how much political damage they can afford. Inside the White House, factions are split, some demanding the disclosures continue no matter what, others begging for restraint. Then chaos hits. A file batch goes live with explicit material before being yanked offline. Survivors immediately respond with outrage, reminding everyone this isn't some celebrity scandal. It's a record of real exploitation. Officials rush to explain, citing privacy protections and redaction protocols, but skeptics see every blacked out section as proof that something's still being hidden. And that's the new paradox. The more authorities try to clarify, the less the public believes them. Every explanation sparks another round of conspiracy threads. Each blackout bar, each missing page, turns into evidence of deeper corruption. At this point, even normal bureaucratic delays take on symbolic weight. Every pause looks like leverage. Every review period feels like negotiation. The longer the silence stretches, the louder the suspicion grows, and the world keeps watching, waiting for the next file to drop. The Epstein files are no longer just evidence. They've turned into currency in a full-blown power war over who controls the story. The heat around them keeps climbing, and cultural icons are moving like the floor's on fire. When Nicki Minaj dropped that cryptic post about a hidden cult, she didn't name a single soul. Yet within hours, the internet had already picked its suspects. Beyoncé and Jay-Z started trending immediately. Old interviews got dissected frame by frame, and concert clips were suddenly decoded for secret meanings. Then Naomi Campbell's name popped back up, her old flight records with Epstein being analyzed all over again, even though she's been publicly condemning his actions for years. But now, in this feverish climate, denials don't calm suspicion. They ignite it. Social media doesn't leave space for nuance anymore. One repost becomes a theory, one theory becomes proof, and before you know it, association turns into accusation. The internet's logic is simple. If you were near the circle, you must have been part of it, and that mindset keeps spreading. Now, Katt Williams' long-running claim that insiders know way more than they'll ever admit is suddenly being treated like prophecy. Comment sections and talk panels keep reframing every new document drop as validation, not revelation. But here's the deeper twist. The power wasn't just about money, it was about access. Epstein's reach depended on who showed up, who accepted the invitations, who kept replying to his emails. Access opened doors, and opportunity came to whoever walked through them. In this world, proximity itself became the prize, and now it's the evidence. Introductions, partnerships, funding, visibility, every connection came with its own risk-reward equation. Walking away could mean losing access, influence, or protection. And that fear explains why so many stayed close even after Epstein's name became public poison. It wasn't just poor judgment. It exposed a systemic flaw, not a few bad choices. The files reveal patterns of routine contact, easy language, and a level of comfort that's almost chilling. What they really show is a circle of people who believed their world was untouchable, a private network that would always stay sealed off. But now, that insulation is cracking wide open under global scrutiny. Contracts are shaking, sponsors are rethinking alliances, and corporate boards are debating whether certain names are just too risky to be around. It's not courtroom panic, it's financial panic, because investors hate uncertainty, and uncertainty now clings to every single name listed in those documents. Officials are scrambling to calm the narrative, repeating that being mentioned doesn't equal guilt. The FBI insists many of the tip line reports are not credible. But in a culture already trained to doubt every official word, those reassurances sound rehearsed, like strategic caution. Survivors aren't waiting around anymore. They're creating their own lists, determined to expose what the government might still be holding back. That parallel investigation screams one thing: trust has collapsed. And when trust dies, rumor takes over. Each blacked out page becomes a symbol. Every unexplained tie turns into a storyline. The Epstein scandal has morphed into more than a criminal saga. It's a mirror held up to the elite world itself. Now the question isn't who broke the law, it's how deep the silence runs, and whether power today operates through open conspiracy or the quieter deal of mutual benefit and shared. Now all that tension finally converges. Everyone's waiting to see what drops next. Maybe more files, maybe another review delay, maybe new names nobody expected. Whatever comes, the fallout's already rolling, proving this isn't a one-time scandal. It's a total reshuffling of power and reputation. If just proximity to Epstein can shake careers and strip titles, imagine what happens if deeper, undeniable links start surfacing. For years, insiders whispered about a protective culture, a system that looked out for its own no matter the cost. Were we all just ignoring those signs until the evidence started screaming from the page? Now, the question burns hotter. Are these releases really about transparency, or are we watching a controlled explosion, carefully timed and engineered? When the next wave hits, who's going to stand exposed, and who's still being quietly shielded behind closed doors? The balance of power is shifting right in front of us, and the script is still being written in real time. What do you think? Are we finally seeing truth or just another layer of manipulation? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and keep the conversation alive. The story's still unfolding, and the pressure, it's only getting heavier.